What has happened to planet Earth and where are we right now?
Well, we have unleashed the destructive forces of capitalism without restraint. And capitalism is doing what it's designed to do, which is commodify everything. Human beings are commodities. The natural world is a commodity that it then exploits until exhaustion or collapse. And in the power of corporations to essentially pillage, loot, and destroy both the ecosystem and the nation state was put into place over the last few decades by creating systems of political paralysis, in essence, where by seizing all of the mechanisms of government, all of the institutions that once made piecemeal and incremental reform possible, and then diverting all of those mechanisms towards the further empowerment and enrichment of the corporate state and the global oligarchic elite, government no longer responded in any rational or meaningful way to the vast majority of the citizenry that it increasingly not only impoverished but repressed by eviscerating privacy, abolishing due process, in the United States in particular, militarizing police so that they use lethal and indiscriminate force against unarmed citizens, primarily citizens of color, putting in place as a form of social control the most monstrous system of mass incarceration in the world. We have 5%, we are 5% of the world's population. We have 25% of the world's prison population. Most of those people are poor people of color from these deindustrialized zones where they're forced, because there are no jobs, into the illegal economy. Poverty, in essence, is criminalized. Police in these marginal communities carry out what can only be called reigns of terror. And we can't forget about eviction. So you lock up the men and you evict the women and the mothers and children. And by evicting people every few months because they can't pay the rent, you further destabilize the community. All of this is by design. And has proven to be extremely dangerous because when you eradicate rights for a segment of your population, Hannah Arendt writes about this in The Origins of Totalitarianism, about the stateless, she herself being stripped of her German citizenship and being stateless, then rights in essence become privileges, which can be taken away from everyone. And so as we stood by, as these marginal communities were turned into kind of quasi-militarized totalitarian states, the assault that began with the poorest and primarily African Americans and Latinos, people of color, is now being extended to the rest of us. And we will have another financial crash eventually. I don't know when, but we're certainly headed in that direction. But as Nomi Prinz and Rick Wolff and other economists have pointed out, there's no plan B. There's no, they can't reduce interest rates any more than they've reduced them when they're virtually at zero. U.S. Treasury bonds will be worthless. And we're reaching that point when the dollar will no longer be the reserve currency, which will send the U.S. economy into freefall. So at that point, they already have the legal and the physical mechanisms to create a very frightening form of tyranny.